Welcome to today's workshop, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about experiment design from A to Z. So to tell you a little bit about the company and myself, my name is Alain, and I'm one of the growth marketing trainers here at G.R.O.W.S. And if you don't know about us, we're an academy and we've trained over 15,000 people and over 900 companies. And our goal is to make sure that everyone keeps on upskilling in such a digital age right now that is fastly changing. Today, this is how our learning journey is going to look like. We're going to start with why experiment in the first place, and then we'll move on to the G.R.O.W.S process, which is the framework and the process that will help us experiment basically and make sure that we set every single step in order to experiment later. And then we're going to move on to types of experiments. We'll see what are the different types that we can try, and the most common experimentation pitfalls, or just some advice from me to you guys on some things that you shouldn't be doing. So the first thing is, why experiment in the first place? We need to experiment because we need to de-risk ideas, and experiments need to be something that will help us validate our ideas. So it's impossible to predict how people will react in a fast-changing world, and this is exactly what we're going through right now and nowadays with the different things that have been changing, especially with COVID, with people's behaviors changing, with everybody moving to the work from home, to many different things that have been changing as well. So we need to test in order to increase efficiency and minimize risk as much as possible. We test, we learn by gathering the data, and then we move on by minimizing the risk. Everybody is building something. So there's a lot of competition out there. This is Product Hunt, a website called Product Hunt, where you can see all the new tools that are being built, all the new businesses that are being built as well. And you can get a lot of inspiration and see how many new technologies are emerging and new ways of implementing them as well. At the same time, ad spend keeps on rising. You can definitely see here in 2021, the digital ad spend in the United States reach or will reach $550 billion. So that's a lot of money in the States alone. So there's a lot of competition out there. Everybody is competing. All the businesses are competing for your attention and for your data. Last but not least, this is a study that was done by Price Intelligently. And it was a study that was done on 743 different companies. And basically, what the results here were, or what they're telling us, is that customer acquisition cost has increased significantly over the years due to market saturation of marketing, vying for consumer attention. Everybody, again, or all the businesses are competing for our attention. The only way for us to stand out is by experimenting fast, gathering that data, and moving forward to the next experiments. And this is exactly what the big companies do nowadays. Google, Amazon, Netflix, Facebook, P&G, all those businesses, they experiment fast. They run thousands of experiments per year. And this is what differentiates them from the not so fast growing companies. Facebook did not decide to become Meta, they did not wake up one day and decide to become Meta out of the blue. They based everything on data. They based all their decision on the previous experiments that they have performed. I posted this on my LinkedIn profile 4 days ago, and this is when I saw the news that Netflix and Spotify are now creating a partnership together. They're going into a partnership together. And again, it did not happen out of the blue. When Squid Games came out, after 2 weeks of it, Spotify listeners had created more than 22,500 unique themed playlists to keep the experience going. And this is when Spotify realized, oh, okay, guys, maybe we can be onto something here. And this is when they decided to go into partnership with Netflix, and Netflix saw that this could also offer them really good opportunities. So again, they studied the data, they saw the impact of Squid Games, and they doubled down on it. Based on that data, they decided to go into that partnership. So that was one of their experiments as well. Now, a successful experimentation process will be defined by the amount of experiments that you run, the success rate of those experiments, and the impact of those experiments as well. Because at the end of the day, if your experiments do not have a decent impact on your metrics, on your company objectives, then they will be in vain. So it's really important for them to have an impact and for you to study that data very well. However, it will go wrong, it will take time, there is no magic formula, there is no magic wand. Please do take into consideration that it might be a little bit frustrating at first to get those results, but you have to keep on pushing. And this is what happens when you start. What we're looking at here are the number of experiments and the return on investment based on those number of experiments as well. So as we can see, when we start experimenting, it's not like we're gonna get those wins and fails like crazy. We're gonna get a couple of wins, we're gonna get a lot of fails, but if we keep on going and if we keep on experimenting, if we keep on learning from the data, if we keep on learning from the experiments, we will end up with huge wins like this one. We can compare this win, for example, to when Mr. Sean Ellis created the referral program for Dropbox in 2009. And you guys probably remember what this was all about. That experiment and that referral program was a huge win for Dropbox, and it was able to put Dropbox on the map and get them to compete with the likes of Microsoft OneDrive and Google Drive as well. But the most important part is that this referral program was also based on data. Sean Ellis and their team and the growth team at Dropbox back then were studying the results from previous experiments, and this is when they decided that, okay, that's an idea of an experiment that we can try and implement. But at the end of the day, they will be an increasingly strong compound growth. Again, we will have fails. The important thing is to learn from them, and compound growth will come at the end. All right, now we saw why we need to experiment and what kind of mindset we need to adopt. Enter the growth process, and this is what we need to be able to experiment correctly. It's a 5-step process that will help us set the stage for the right experiments. Step number 1 is gathering ideas. And how do we gather ideas? Again, we rely on previous data, or we can also try and collect external data, see some public statistics, see some things, some studies that have been popping up maybe about some user behavior and whatnot. It's really important to know what's going on, stay up to date, learn from it, and base your ideas on it. And this is the pirate funnel, which is the end-to-end customer journey. It's a 6-step journey for every customer, and it's important for us to know that any idea for an experiment that we come up with, it's going to be specifically for one of those stages of the funnel. All right? So keep that in mind, and let's move forward. But this is why it's really important for us to define what every stage means for us and how do we measure it. Step number 2 is ranking ideas. And of course, let's say I have 50 amazing ideas right now, but I cannot try them all at once. What I'm gonna have to do is prioritize so I can allocate the resources that I have basically for that specific idea or for that specific experiment. And now we move to outlining the experiment, which is 100% where the designing process comes in. So this is the experiment design canvas. We're gonna leave it and talk about it. So feel free to take a screenshot of it if you need to. And we're gonna talk about the 4 major steps of that canvas. Now, in this canvas, it's really important to, first of all, state which stage of the funnel my idea is going to be serving. And for the sake of this presentation, my idea for that experiment is to relocate the call to action button on my homepage. All right, so that's the idea. And let's start with the factors, factors that I have to fill. First of all, we will start with the assumption. What do I assume that this idea or this experiment will help me with? In this case, I can say that we believe that by relocating the call to action button above the fold or in the middle of the landing page, it will increase the click-through rate or the number of clicks by 10%. And that's the assumption. To verify that, we will, and this is where we go into the details of the experiment. Who am I gonna need help from? What am I going to do? And when am I going to do it as well? Plus, who is the target audience that will be affected? Now, how can I describe this? I can say, to verify that, we will design a new call to action button with the art department or the design department, and then we will ask the IT department to relocate that CTA button for us, or an IT engineer, and we will do this on the website, and we will test it for a couple of weeks to see the effects of it. and let's say starting Friday and 2 weeks after that. All right, it's really important to be specific with the verification process and with the whole canvas, with the whole design process, because whoever is looking at our design canvas needs to understand it as well. So especially if you work in a team, in a growth team, and not alone as an entrepreneur or a one-man or woman show. Next, we've got the measuring part. And this is also very, very important. This is where data comes in. What is the data that am I going to track? And it's really important to make sure that you track the quantitative part and the qualitative part as well. In our courses, we talk a lot about data and the difference between quantitative and qualitative, and what each one of those actually serve. But to briefly explain this, quantitative data is anything that is quantifiable. So basically, anything with a number. The click-through rate, the number of sessions, the bounce rate, the average time spent on the page, and so on. So these are all metrics in the quantitative part of data. The qualitative part, for example, can help me track and study the user behavior mainly, and a lot of feedback. So for example, I can send out surveys. I can conduct user interviews. I can conduct user testing. I can use tools to help me check user recordings on my landing page, and also heat maps. So those are all qualitative parts of the data that can help me figure out why what is happening is happening. Quantitative will tell me what is happening. Qualitative will tell me why, and it's important to put both together. So in this case, I want to measure the click-through rate. So that's the quantitative part. I might also want to measure the user recordings and the heat maps on my landing page. And this will help me figure out why I got the click-through rate that I got. And moving on to the we are right if, and this is where we set the goal. This is really important because you will base your success criteria basically will be that goal. So you will deem this experiment as a win or a fail based on what you put in this section. So what I will say here, for example, we are right if the click-through rate increases by 10%. So after 2 weeks, when I'm studying the data, if my click-through rate has increased by 9%, I can say that this experiment was a fail. If it increased by 10 or more, then I can say that it's a win. And this is how we design an experiment. Make sure to add as much detail as you can on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. For example, on the right-hand side of the Canva, we have the start and end date, possible blockers, for example. We all know that we might be facing blockers like budgets, or maybe, let's say, I need the IT department to help me out and they're super busy, so that could be a blocker. And then tools needed, relevant links, and estimated costs if there are any. And that's step number 3, and that's how we outline the experiment. Now, once we've designed the path for the experiment, we jotted down all the things that we need, we move on to the execution process, and this is step number 4. This is when we get shit done. So make sure that you do, and from there on, study the data all the time. Make sure that you're tracking everything, make sure that you're studying the data, because at the end of the day, if we do not learn from this experiment, nothing will matter. We will just be wasting time and money. We're gonna move on to the types of experiments that we have to talk about as well. So what are the types of experiment that I should run or I could run? The first one is a trigger test, and this is a really famous one. It's the A/B test or the ABC test. So it's basically comparing 2 or 3 different factors and seeing which one will yield us the best possible results. So in this example, we have 3 different ads and that redirect to the same landing page. The thing that we have to compare is the click-through rate between those ads, and the one that yields us the best click-through rate will be the one that we will keep, basically. That is one type of experiment that we can run. Another example about a trigger test is this one. So at G.R.O.W.S, we wanted to see the difference between 2 main keywords that we wanted to include in our ads. So we created 2 exact same ads, but we just changed the keyword. We went with growth hacking skills on one side and with growth marketing skills on the other. And we saw that the ad where we said, or where we wrote growth hacking instead of growth marketing, got us a better click-through rate. And as you can see, it's 1.38% compared to 1.08. All right, so test number 2, or experiment, type of experiment number 2, is what we call a smoke test. And let's say in this example that you have a landing page and you want to know which channel will bring you the better leads or the better sign-up rates. So let's say you want to compare your traffic that is coming from Google to the one that is coming from Facebook. So you create 2 different ads, and you will basically just compare the sign-up rates at the end of the experiments. And if you get, for example, more sign-ups from Google than Facebook, then you would know that Google is a better option for you in this case. A high hurdle test is a really important test, or a pretty interesting one to say the least, because this is where you increase the hurdles for your personas to test their intent. In this example, we created a PDF, and what we basically wanted to do as well is tell everyone that if you want that PDF, all you have to do is fill in a form and you'll be able to download it. But what we wanted to see as well is how many will actually go through all those questions to get that PDF. And this is how you can differentiate between your audience, or the audience who has a higher intent or is really willing to go through the hurdles and the troubles to get the content that you have created for them. And this is something that can basically tell you who are your power users and who are not. So find your audience, pitch them the idea, and let them fill a really long survey to see if they really want it. Next is an MVP test, and this is what we call a minimum viable product. And this is when you start testing something that is kind of a smaller version of your main product. Let's say we're designing a car. It's not like you start with 1 wheel and test that, and then continue with 2 wheels and test that with your audience, and just 3 wheels and the body. No, you need the full functioning thing. But it can actually be another version of wheels, but at least it will help your customers or your power users actually do something. To give you an example of what an experiment of a minimum viable product can be, it's actually this one. This is an assumption that one of our alumni had for his company where he was working. And his assumption was that we think an online self-service system will shorten our sales cycle and allow people to customize their car without having to come to the showroom. So he worked at a car leasing company. Usually people would have to come to the showroom, pick the car that they need, and then fill in a form, and then get a call from the sales rep a couple of weeks later, and then get the car delivered. So the assumption here is that instead of having all this friction, we can let the users customize their cars online and say what they want, say exactly what they want, state all the requirements that they need, and after that, we'll be able to deliver the car in 2 days. So this assumption will basically remove a lot of the friction for those people. To verify that, we will create a website collecting leads in a CRM, create a visual customization tool, and send a custom quote. This person created an MVP through those 4 tools. So he created a new landing page so that he did not implement all the changes of the experiment on the main website, but rather he created a landing page that was an MVP, that served as an MVP for them, a minimum viable product, and drove traffic through Facebook ads to that page, and then had people sign up by collecting their emails through MailChimp, and then sent them the form, the self-service form, through Typeform. And that was it. That was the MVP. So instead of testing on a big scale and implementing everything on the main website, they implemented the experiment that they wanted to try on a landing page. And this is the landing page on the left. Of course, it will not win any designers awards, but it's conversion centric. It has one goal in mind, which is to get those signups, to get those forms in, and look at this call to action button. It's huge. There's no way you can miss it. And when you sign up, you will receive that form later on where you will be able to customize anything that you want from the cars themselves. So you'll be able to Customize the colors, customize the interiors, the exteriors, the rim, the brand, the motor, and whatnot. In 2 days, one person was able to create this process, and it did not cost him a lot. It cost him around 130 euros plus labor cost plus 5 to 8 euros per Facebook ad lead. And at the end of the first day, he got the first hard conversion, which was a sale. But of course, 1 day is not enough to validate your assumptions. You have to give enough time for the data to start flowing in so you can actually start studying and trusting that data that you get. And after they got enough data that the experiment works on the MVP itself, they decided to implement everything on the main website. And based on the data, of course, again, they saw that they had an 800% increase in leads, and Max, who was behind the idea and the experiment, got promoted to head of growth at Mr. Green. So that's how you can test with an MVP. Next, we've got the split test, and basically we're splitting traffic here. On one page, let's say you have two identical or two similar pages with only one variable that is changing. So on one page we've got variation A, on the second we've got variation B. We send 50% of the visitors to page A, we send the other 50% to page B, and then we compare the results. In this case, page B or variation A, or the page with variation A, got the higher conversion rate. That's another example from United Wardrobe. As we can see in their checkout option or page, we could see that they changed the call to action from one to the other, and they saw that on one page they were able to get a 3.32% CTR uplift, click-through rate uplift, just by changing one variation, which was the call to action buttons over there. It's really important to remember that in this specific test, one variation needs to be changed, not many. Why? Because if you change many variations, it will be a multivariate test, what we call a multivariate test, which is a test like this one. A multivariate test is basically changing many variations at the same time, or many factors at the same time. In this case, this is HelloPrint's main landing page, and this was their home page, the one on the left. They wanted to change many things at the same time, so they removed the bar, they changed the call to action, they added less products with cheaper prices, they deleted the distractions that were in the middle, and this is the new landing page that they got after changing all those things, and they had a 28% increase in conversions because of those multi-variation changes, or those multi-variations basically. All right, the last two types of experiments are sequential test, and a sequential test can be used when you're not getting a lot of traffic to the website yet. Let's say you're just starting off and you need enough traffic for you to be able to trust the data that you're getting back. So what you can do is use all that traffic during a specific date range. So let's say you will use one specific landing page for 2 weeks, week 1 and week 2, and when week 2 is done, you will go with another landing page for week 3 and week 4. But again, there's also one thing that, or a couple of things that you can take into consideration with tests like these, is that if you're comparing conversions at the end of both times or experiments, please take into consideration that usually people with salaries get paid by the end of the month, which means that the reason that week 3 and week 4 would have higher conversions might be the fact that people have money at the end of the month. So just make sure that you're taking all the different variations or side effects into consideration as well. All right, sequential test, and then we move on to the Wizard of Oz. And the Wizard of Oz is kind of like an MVP test, but it's actually testing the whole business model. It's not implementing a mini idea of it, it's implementing the whole idea, but on a smaller scale in terms of sales. Now this is Zappos.com, and what they wanted to do is, in '99, they wanted to see if people would actually start buying their shoes online. So instead of putting all their brands online and giving all their fans all the options and going through the extra effort and doing the actual time investment and money investing into moving all their stock online, they decided to test with a couple of brands first or a couple of shoes first, just to see if their audience or if their persona would pick this up as well. So that's what they did. And sometimes we think that the automation process is just also behind the scenes. So for example, I would go, let's say I went or I'm gonna go on Amazon and order an item, and I order it, I receive it in a couple of days, and it's as easy as that. In the back of my mind, it's just an automation process, but behind the scenes, it's actually many processes and many people handling that one product. There's a person who will receive the order, there's a person who will check the stock maybe, there's another person who will pick the item, there's another person maybe who will deliver the item, and so on. So the Wizard of Oz type of experiment can help you figure out if people will go like pick this up with you before you put in all the effort that you need to put to make the process work. And reaching the last section of the day or the webinar is the most common experimentation pitfall, the don'ts. Now I have just a couple of advice for you guys with the don'ts when it comes to experiments or when it comes to experimentation. Please do not take a long time. More than 2 weeks would just be you taking time from the future experiments. We have a saying at G.R.O.W.S, we say test fast and fix later, because it's really important for us to be able to get the results back fast. Because it's more important to learn from the experiments through the data that you're getting back than actually taking the time, taking a very long time, and taking time out of future experiments as well. Because you will be also taking time from future learnings, and you want to learn fast in order to move fast and progress faster. Please do not ignore the user experience. I know a lot of experiments can be very exciting. So for example, let's say I want to install a pop-up on my website that will increase the sign-up rates or it will increase the conversion rates for me. But let's say I decide to go with a really huge pop-up, and with a pop-up that will also not have a very clear X button where the user can find it and exit that pop-up. At the end of the day, I might get extra sign-ups or more sign-ups, or I might get the sign-up rate to increase, but this could also affect my bounce rate. If people who do not want to sign up cannot find that X button, they will leave the whole website. So do not ignore your user experience, do not ignore the UX basically, and how the user will feel when they're on your website, because it's really important for them to find the things that they were expecting to find as well. And pop-ups sometimes can be very annoying. I'm sure you guys know all about it. Do not ignore the fundamentals as well. Today we talked about the G.R.O.W.S process. We also talked about how you can design an experiment and whatnot. But for us to be able to trust that this design and those ideas are really going to help us out with the long-term plans and the long-term results, we have to go back to the fundamentals. The fundamentals are the stage that we need to set for the experimentation process to yield us the best possible results. Please go back and visit your value proposition. Make sure that it reflects exactly what you're all about. It reflects exactly what your website does or offers. It reflects exactly what your audience or personas can actually expect to find on your landing page or website. Go back and revisit and update your persona template. Make sure that your pirate funnels are also mapped out, defined, and also the measurements are there. What are you going to track at each stage of the funnel? So it's really important basically to go back to the fundamentals. Once you have these things set, you will be able to easily experiment later on. And last but not least, please do not ignore your data, because if we cannot measure, we cannot improve. We don't want to end up like this guy. We want to make sure that we're tracking all the things that are possible to track, so we can come up with better ideas for better experiments to get us better results at the end of the day. Thanks a lot, guys. That was a lot of fun for me. I hope it was for you too. I hope you benefited from it, and I'll see you soon. Thanks a lot.